And a very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's USITT New at Noon. My name is Cody, and I'll be your host of these New at Noon sections every Monday through Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time, right here on our new virtual platform. Sorry, I just wanted to take a moment and apologize for the slight delay this morning. We were trying to fix a connection issue with our Facebook Live account. So I think we've got it fixed, and we should be broadcasting live now. So thank you for that, and sorry about that little delay. Now, although our conference may have been canceled due to the global COVID-19 pandemic, our commitment to education and training has not and will not stop. Every Monday through Thursday, USITT will be bringing you at least 2 educational sessions, New at Noon, which will feature new products, new industry partners and exhibitors to USITT, creative and emerging technologies, as well as industry response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and Forum at 4, which will take the educational sessions that would have been presented at our conference in Houston and translate these to our new virtual environment. The great thing about these webinar series is that you still really get a chance to get involved and interact with industry professionals and get your questions answered here live on our Zoom platform. You can find more information on all of our offerings, and they are free, which I know is everyone's favorite word right now, on our website at www.usitt.org. And just keep in mind that every Friday, that website is updated for the next week's session. So check back tomorrow for all of next week's content. Now, for those of you that may have questions today during the webinar, which we do encourage, please go ahead and use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Simply click on the Q&A box, type your question in, and that'll submit it to Jake and I, today's presenter. If you see a question on the Q&A panel that you do like, you can go ahead and give it the thumbs up mark, and that'll get it to the top of our queue so we can make sure that your question gets answered as quickly as possible. For those of you watching on Facebook Live, please feel free to write your question in the comments field, and we'll make sure to get that taken care of as well. Now, today we're super excited to have Jake McCoy. He's the Executive Producer of Operations for RWS Entertainment. Jake, welcome to New at Noon. Are you there?
I am here. Hello, Cody.
Hi,
how's
Jake.
it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Perfect. Before we get started today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your position with RWS?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at RWS for, I think about 6 years now. I started as a cruise line production manager and worked for several different cruise line clients in my early years at RWS. And most recently, in April of 2018, we launched our experiences department. So I kicked off that department with a small group at RWS. We started when we originally started in April. There was 3 of us that could fit in an office, and then we got up to about a team of 30 or so. So it grew very quickly from 2018 until now.
That's amazing. That's a fast growing team there. That's amazing. That's awesome. That means there's lots of work out there for you guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I currently oversee a team of production managers, technical directors, project managers, and coordinators for all of our experiential installations around the globe.
That's amazing. And for those of our viewers that may not be familiar with who RWS is, can you give us a little bit about RWS as a company and the experience group as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will have a little video here in a little bit that I think will be great and helpful. But ultimately, RWS is a RWS Entertainment Group. We have been around for 17 years now. We started our RWS stands for our CEO's name, Ryan Williams-Stana. He is our CEO and founder. And it was really a small group of people that started with Ryan in the beginning, and it was initially a production company based for live entertainment, mainly geared for theme park shows and fairly heavy in the leisure and hospitality market. So we were doing quite a bit for theme parks, cruise ships, retail, and special events and things like that, mainly in New York City. And then throughout the years, we continued to expand our client list, and it really kind of exploded. We now manage several cruise lines for their entire fleet of entertainment packages on board, as well as theme parks around the globe. And newly, our experiences department, which is what I'm planning on mainly talking about today, has a whole slew of really new, fun, and interesting projects because what I think is great is we've worked with many of our same clients that we've been with since the beginning, and many new clients as well. And going back into these retail markets and going back into these cruise ships and these theme parks and really doing a fresh makeover and touching on this this world of experiential entertainment.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jake. Well, I guess let's go ahead and dive right in.
Absolutely, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
Perfect.
Let's go ahead. Share. And here we are. You got that, Cody? You can see
all
the
good.
Screen?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Cool. So here we are, and welcome to our Experiences Crash Course. You can see here RWS Ignites is on the front here. This presentation is actually part of what we call our Ignites series. So we actually had all intentions of being at our USITT in person this year. It would have been a fully Ignites themed booth. I'll talk about Ignites a little bit later on, but it is essentially a specific project at RWS right now that is very much geared towards recruitment and training, which is what we're all doing. So,
and Jake, I just wanted to hop in there and remind all of our viewers out there, this was RWS, this was going to be your first year at USITT, so we're super excited to have you guys.
I know. I know. I'm so glad we were able to do this because we were really excited to go there. So here we are, and actually, I think before we get in, before we hop into things here, it's a really good moment to just kind of touch on that point. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to be here right now, but also for continuing to do this for yourself. I think during this time, it is so important to continue to grow in our industry and to stay relevant and to stay current. So the fact that everybody is here right now, taking advantage of these types of opportunities, I think is really amazing. So today we're going to focus on experiences. You're going to hear me say that word a lot. We're going to really dive into that world of experiential activation. So this could be anything from large-scale fireworks shows, spectaculars, giant Christmas tree shows, haunted houses, pop-up immersive retail experiences, and just about anything in between. Pretty much nothing on the list that couldn't be an experience at this point, but we'll really dive in. So this is what we're going to be going through today. A little bit more about who we are as a company, RWS. I've got a little video to show you guys. Some samples of what we do, which I think is really helpful and kind of helps explain the world of experiences to give some visual and some perspective on these. And then specifically, I want to talk about experiences, what makes an experience, what defines it, and then working in experiences. I would like to just share really some tips and tricks for you guys about the business. So who we are. I'm going to share this little video here, and there is sound on this video as well.
We are the creators of award-winning custom experiences, live events, and branded entertainment. We've become the largest live production facility in New York City.
And our global business is growing, with London as our brand new European headquarters.
We bring to life more than 400 live experiences every year.
In 2019, nearly 300 million people experienced an RWS product. That's more than 4 times the population of the UK.
And those experiences generated millions of impressions.
We do it all.
On land and sea.
From Broadway to broad horizons.
But we're not just creators. We're recruitment and career development leaders, hiring 4,500 performers and technicians worldwide every year.
Last year, we designed and installed enough experiences to fill Buckingham Palace more than 50 times.
And we're just getting started.
Great. So as you can see, a lot going on at RWS. So a little bit about what we do. I have some more videos that I'm going to share here. These ones do not have sound. I'm actually going to kind of talk through them a little bit. All of these projects that we're coming up on here are all specifically what I would consider experiences, or what we would consider experiences at RWS. I have also had personal experience working on many of these projects as well, so I think that the narration will be helpful rather than a little sizzle reel music. So first up, we're going to talk about Six Flags Holiday in the Park. So this was in Chicago, Illinois. This was an inaugural design and execution, which is a really big deal for an event like this, because this really has the potential to run for many, many years. As you can see, there's quite a bit. We did quite a bit of LED technology on this event. There are video walls. It's actually, for us, what was really fun about this was some of the product that we put at this property was first to America for the first time. We were working with a vendor over in Spain, and we're doing a whole bunch of custom decor pieces. So it was also, to note here, 500 acres of design space, absolutely massive. If anybody's ever been to Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois, it's a very large property. Doing this type of installation outdoors poses a whole lot of unique challenges. But if you back up your production timeline a little bit further in advance for something like this, it can be accomplished with the right amount of people. For us, this was about a 9-month project from start to finish. So here we go. That was Six Flags Holiday in the Park. A Holiday Borealis. So what I think is interesting about this is this was for City of Newport News in Newport News, Virginia. It was actually our first municipality client. So we were hired by the city directly. You can see there's a 50-foot, I believe it's a 50-foot tall pixel pine tree, which is made by a company called S4 Lights. They're a commercial and really specifically a Christmas tree lighting provider in Virginia that we work very closely with. This entire experience was executed by RWS in tandem with the city, with some other partners they did as well. As you can see, there's a large fountain here. There is talks for future years of expanding. We've gone through engineering plans of what it would look like to put the tree on the water, put a barge out there, add in fireworks spectaculars, rooftop snow machines. So these guys are really interested in making this an awesome experience. What's great is that this is for their community and it's free. So this isn't something that you have to go pay to, go to a theme park to see. Nobody's ultimately making money off of this. This is just something that the city is doing for the taxpayers that live there, which is really kind of fun. So we're going to switch holidays for a second here and go over to Halloween. This is Sewer of Souls in Six Flags Magic Mountain in LA, California. This is the Bathroom, which is a bathroom themed bar that you started out in. And then you went through this 3D blacklight maze. So you actually wore these, glasses to go through. We used quite a bit of wildfire paint throughout to do treatments. There's an effects team that mainly for haunted houses, we actually tend to hire quite a bit of folks with film experience. Haunted house work is relatively similar to that in some of the effects and what we're doing for the scenic treatments. But what's really unique about this haunted house is that it was in such a small area. This was actually in an abandoned, basically what was like a ride ops, small, very, very small building. So there was a lot of, it was a very tightly packed experience. You got a lot of bang for your buck when you went through there, but it was a really exciting experience for us. Also, fun fact, one of our first haunted houses at RWS. But taking it outdoors on Halloween, this is Creatures of the Night. This is what we would call a scare zone. So this is an outdoor, essentially an outdoor haunted house. We did work with their culinary team to do some themed food and beverages. What's really cool is this is a zoo, so there's animals around, and that adds a whole nother element to the haunted house experience. But we were able to take some really cool concepts. We twisted Tales Trail, which is basically like taking your classic fairy tale stories, turning them on their head. There's like twisted little red there. And then we also did sort of more of a, Rising Waters was more of a Florida based, like some evil spirits had taken over an Everglades town. Really cool project. We've been doing quite a bit of work with Zoo Tampa. What's fun about a property like that is because they have such great weather for the most part, other than, you know, having to plan for rain, because they've got great weather year round, you can really continue on with outdoor experiences year round for them. Whereas some of our clients, we may be looking at a more seasonal approach, where we have to take things indoors during certain times of years if they don't necessarily have the real estate outside. But with somewhere like Florida or California, we can essentially be running outdoor experiences year long, which is kind of a cool fact about those areas. So really diving into these experiences a little bit more, I want to talk specifically about this as a term that we've been using. So I like to say client-based entertainment, theater without always being in traditional theater. Very, very rarely are me and my team ever in a traditional theater for these types of projects. The bulk of what we're doing is outside. However, I do see, you know, an obvious change to be kind of doing a mix of some things there as well, but I don't like to call it corporate theater. I think corporate theater is a different world. I think client-based entertainment is a little bit different because essentially we're being hired by a client to produce some type of entertainment activation. So this isn't, you know, me and Ryan Stana and the VP sitting around saying like, oh, what are we going to drum up and try and sell out to the world and make tickets? We are being hired as a firm by these different companies, by Six Flags, by SeaWorld, by Holland America Line, by all of those brands that you guys know and love. So I think it's also worth mentioning that these are customized shows or activations based on a specific demographic. So typically, this isn't just a show for being a show. Typically, they're saying to us, you know, we are looking with this haunted house, we are looking to get a particular age demographic of 16 to 21, or we are looking for a family-friendly haunted house. Because for me, I'm going to work on a family-friendly haunted house very, very differently than I am a 16 to 21 haunted house. Even just for things like the scare tactics, the aesthetic, all of that. So really knowing your demographic is incredibly important. I have to keep my finger on the pulse of present day to excite and engage audiences. Otherwise, nobody's gonna come. If I'm not doing stuff that's current or relevant or hip, then the guest ultimately isn't going to want to come, and perhaps the client isn't going to want to continue to work with us either. So nobody wants anything stale. It's not to say that you can't work off of a concept that you've done in the past, but you need to continue to stay engaged, just like everybody's doing right now. Looking at new technologies is a huge part of the experiential world. A big part of what my team does for my production managers and technical directors is really doing deep dives into different types of gear and product just about every week, coming to me with new product, new gears. Hey, look at this new light. There's this new type of projector that can do this thing. All of that is very important because those are essentially the tools that we paint with for these experiences. Focusing on emotional souvenirs and Instagrammable moments. So I'm just going to kind of say those words for right now, and we're going to go back to that in a minute because I have some separate slides on those, but emotional souvenir and Instagrammable moment. And I think it's also worth mentioning, not necessarily a means for social change, unlike theater. It's not to say that an experience can't be, but typically it's not. Of course, depends on who your client is and who you're being hired for. If I was being hired by a nonprofit to do an experiential activation that was supposed to create buzz and hype in the middle of Times Square, that might be a different scenario because maybe they might be in that situation going for social change. Typically not. Typically we're creating experiences that are supposed to be geared, of course, for that demographic, but for a sort of common denominator. So you're assuming, you have to understand that when you're, you know, producing something that's going into a theme park, you can't, you know, have only 1% of the population that's going to like that show. It's going to get awful ratings. It's going to be torn to pieces, and I'm going to get in trouble. So we don't do something like that. So we're kind of creating these worlds of like, hey, everybody might like this type of idea. Let's build off of that. And that's sort of where our creative process builds and goes from. Again, not to say that we're ever limited in these things, because truly there are endless possibilities here. But we do have to understand that there's thousands of people that go to these properties or visit these sites per day. So the emotional souvenir, I had mentioned that before, a new tradition, a forever memory, and a smile that lasts forever. So for me, I would say if we've done what you see in this photo, if we've achieved this, then we've done our job. If I get that kid smiling, that parent smiling, and even that performer smiling too, great. We can go home. I can go cook dinner. But that doesn't naturally happen. We have engineered that in. So that is something that we have to keep in mind with these experiences, particularly with children. Now, in this photo, I'm not necessarily talking about this this demographic of child. So I'm saying, you know, anyway, all the way from child to adult, right? This could be their first introduction to entertainment, period. This kid didn't wake up in the morning knowing that they were going to the mall. A kid that, you know, gets dragged on a cruise ship to go on vacation with his family doesn't necessarily know what they're getting in for in that scenario either. So we always keep in mind that we very well might be their first introduction to entertainment, first time ever seeing a performer, first time ever seeing, you know, stage lights turn on. That is something that we keep in mind, and we keep that spark and that magic and that memory fresh. But again, engineering that emotional souvenir in, so that we make sure that our experiences are built this way from the ground up. Instagrammable moments. So an engaging photo opportunity, make an impact. This is, I think, now more important than ever, but ultimately we're asking two questions every time we're getting into an experience. How do we tell the story, and what is the impact, right? So I always tell my team, anytime they're done at the end of the day, if they think they're done at the end of the day, we're just going to say, take a photo, look at it on your photo. Would you post it on your Instagram? And if not, why not? Because that is so important. We are right now, we are producing through the lens of an iPhone. Anything that happens, this giant, beautiful snowflake star arch that you see here, there's no way that guests are not going to walk up to that and take a picture. If I walk up to that, I'm going to take a picture. That's ultimately why it's there. It's a giant photo op. So knowing that, you have to engineer that in. That means I need to make sure those cables are clean. That means I need to make sure that, you know, it's attached a proper way. Is it facing the right way? Should we have turned it around maybe? All of those things are so important, so that you really compose these shots. And a lot of times I'll even provide a map to the client, and I'll say, okay, here's your experience. It covers 500 acres. The 10 stars that are red is where you should stand to take an Instagram photo. And sometimes clients nowadays will even go so far as to just put a thing on the floor and say, stand here, take your photo. And that helps, because ultimately we're framing it up for them. So if we're doing this properly, then we're bringing in more crowds. We're really utilizing and leveraging the power of social media. For some of our clients, that could mean more ticket sales. Hey, I saw that picture that got posted. I had no idea that that was there, especially if it's a new experience, if it's not necessarily the same thing that's happening year after year. And viral, tricky word to say, but very important word nowadays as well, when it comes to some of these videos and things like that. Not necessarily something that we're considering right off the bat from an engineering and a design standpoint, but something that the client may be considering if we're looking at a video or a situation like that where they're really looking to make a social media impact. So working in experiences. We're going to dive into this a little bit more specifically. I have some of this is tips. Some of this is specific to RWS, and some of this is really just, you know, experiential entertainment, experiential marketing, experiential activations as a whole. These tips would hold true for anyone. So being a great all-around technician is so important. Being a great all-around designer is important too. If you're on the design side, this particular side is a little bit more technician focused. But being a specialist with additional skill sets is so helpful. That to me just as an actual fact for RWS, all of these experiences around the globe, right? My number one most hired position for is called installation technician. It's actually a position that we pretty much just created specifically for the experiences industry, but is my number one most frequent position because I need that jack of all trades guy. Now, it's great for me if you come up and you say, now my focus is in electrics, but I also now had a rig and I'm interested in doing this. And, you know, maybe I have some carpentry experience, or maybe I can design, or all of that is great. But continue to stay round. Don't necessarily be limited to one thing, because you're only going to limit yourself in that scenario. So opportunity for the non-specialists all around tech to thrive in the industry. That's what I was just saying there for that installation tech. I mean, for me, again, stagehand, what would be considered stagehand in the sort of more traditional theatrical community is that installation tech for me. So I'm needing that general person, as much experience as possible in any disciplines, I'll take it. But ultimately for me, one of the amazing things that I can rely on for RWS is that we have this training program, we have onboarding, specifically when it comes to some of these Christmas projects. We actually have something called Christmas College, where we will actually put you through a proper training program before you ever set foot on a job site, because there are so many unique things about that industry. We really want to go into the specifics of, you know, how do you do perimeter lights on the top of houses for Christmas? How do you properly fluff a Christmas tree according to RWS, and things like that. So how to get more experience, continue to stay involved, like I said earlier, do more things like this, and continue to take jobs. Interviewing for positions that aren't your specialty, I think, is really important. Again, don't limit yourself, especially in the interview process. It's never going to hurt to continue to take interviews. Even if you're not interested in taking that position, you could use the interview experience as well. So just keep that in mind. Jumping in, being ready to work, no matter the weather or the role. The weather is a big one for us. Again, like I said, you know, that Six Flags Great America, that was a 9-month install. When the crew showed up there in July and they started wrapping trees, it was hot and they were wearing t-shirts and shorts. By the time they ended there in November in Chicago, we were in negative temperatures. So the temperature range going throughout the duration of a project can be really drastically from -10 to 100, depending on where you're at. So that weather is a really big part of it. Having to stay positive in cold days and continue to push on, you know, and just make it to the next break. That is a really big part of this as well. How to be a guest relations specialist as a technician. So I actually think probably on this slide, to me, that is the number one most important piece here. And I'm not saying guest relations specialist as in, like, you know, you need to have some type of, you know, specific hospitality training or run a hotel or anything like that. I'm saying guest relations as in be a good person. And we'll talk about this later when it comes into connections and why this can help you in the industry. But I think specifically for technicians, sometimes we get a bad rep when it comes to things like this, because we're put in often precarious situations. So if I'll just give an example for this. If I've got a technician that's on site and he's been, you know, maybe it was a crazy day. We had to start at 6 a.m. because there was some type of limitation at the end of the day. It was cold. We're out there, we're going through our project, and this technician does an amazing job. They get through their project, they finish at the end of the day. Client walks up, says, "Hey, why isn't that light working over there? You particularly have nothing to do with this light." You're going to say, your options are either, "I have no idea, can't help you, let me look into this," or, "Hey, actually, I happen to know that that's Jim's the crew chief and he's standing right over there. Why don't you go ask Jim?" So the latter two are more helpful scenarios. Number one, which you could do in that scenario and just say, "Sorry, can't help you, end of my shift, got to leave." Fine. Client's going to say, "Sheesh," you know, if they're not going to say something to me, they're going to think something right there. So it doesn't hurt just to be like, "You know what, I'm actually not sure at all, but let me check with my supervisor. I'll get back to you." check with Jim's crew, whatever you can do to kind of point them in the right direction in any scenario, rather than saying like, sorry, I can't help you, you're screwed. Again, it's just about being good people. Being people that we want to work with is so key, right? Economics. So I think the salary tends to be a bit higher than typical attractions work. My caveat here is I am not saying at all to not work directly for the attractions industry. You absolutely can. There's plenty of great employment opportunities working directly for those folks. However, it's different models of employment. So someone like RWS that is essentially focusing on being a design, management, and installation firm, we are being hired as a professional service. That's different than if you were to work directly for a particular park, and they might be interested in just saying like, hey, I need, you know, a general stagehand person to come in and help us run this show, and they can only pay, you know, $12.50 an hour, whereas I can pay $25.50 an hour. Again, that's just completely an example, but I wanted to kind of put that into perspective there as well, so people understand what I mean by that. Again, not discouraging it, just want to keep, you know, your minds open to these different things. Often includes travel, which is covered by the company. Again, I mentioned in the beginning here, I used to work in the cruise lines industry when I first started at RWS. I've been everywhere from Japan to Antarctica to you name it. So this is a really fun perk. If you want to travel, this type of thing can be really cool. You can travel for installations. Sometimes you can be traveling for special events. You can be traveling for rehearsals. And both for a company like RWS, that is global with both offices in London and New York City, you've got that option for both international and domestic travel as well. I spent quite a bit of time in Europe and Asia in my time at RWS so far. And lastly, that 1099 versus W-2 employment. So what I'm talking about here is just keeping your mind open to this and understanding it, that when you're brought in as a contractor versus being brought in as a seasonal employee. Now, my particular policy for RWS is that I would likely, I don't want to discourage here because I don't know exactly who's on the call, but I likely would not be hiring this group as as contractors. I would likely be hiring you as seasonal employees. Because for us, RWS hiring contractors, there's a certain insurance requirement that comes with that. So typically for me, when I'm hiring a contractor, I'm hiring a company, right? I'm hiring, you know, a lighting company to go install some type of electrical thing for me. If I'm hiring people, I'm typically hiring seasonal employees. So what that means is you're working for us for, could be 1 day, could be 6 months. And you are paid on a bi-weekly basis through our payroll company. You are also getting workers' comp insurance through that W-2 employment as well. Connections. So working with the industry's best. I think this, again, so important. This was a really big thing for me, particularly at RWS. You guys can see on this slide here, that's actually me and Oprah Winfrey over on the right. I happen to be working very smoothly with the Holland America Line team at RWS. We continue to stay involved with them, and they had launched a brand partnership between Holland America Line and Oprah Magazine. I got brought into that situation. Again, I continue to be someone who they wanted to work with. And ultimately, I ended up doing celebrity and logistic management for Miss Winfrey. It was an amazing experience. But all I'm saying here is be somebody that you want to work with. That quote that I have where everybody in New York City is good. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a performer, director, designer. If you've made it to New York City, you know, everybody here is good. You have to be somebody that you want to work with. Why? What is it that it's, hey, I'm going to pick up the phone and call this guy because I had a great experience with them, etc. So networking, that is very important. Take time for informal communication. Take time to do things like this. Go to events, collect business cards, get on email addresses, all of that type of stuff as much as you can, especially right now while we're stuck at home. I think now is the perfect time to continue to take advantage of those opportunities. It is a very small world of entertainment. Everybody knows everyone, everyone talks. So just, you know that keep that in mind. That's one of the first things I'm doing when I'm going through people's resumes is like, do I know anyone on this resume? Oh yeah, I know that guy. Okay, great. I'm gonna ask this person what they thought. That's a lot of how that goes, particularly in New York City as well. Longevity. So again, I'm talking here on this slide about the difference between working for somewhere like RWS, where it's a firm, where it's possibility for continuous employment, not necessarily just one project. So of course, we're going to bring people in that are project specific. I'm going to hire a stage manager and a lighting designer and a costume designer for a specific production, sure. But I might also be hiring a production manager for 9 months, or 6 months, or 10 years, or indefinitely. That's the other thing, is a lot of our cruise lines are running indefinitely as well. So this possibility for continued employment is important, especially if you're interested in experiential activations and you're looking around. What you'll see is that a lot of this industry is seasonal based. Unless if you're, really at a certain tier or you're working with a specific group of people, you're focused on a couple select holidays throughout the year. Of course, we're going to start planning Christmas in May. May 1st is actually when we start our Christmas logistics. So even just that seasonal holidays is keeping you busy all year round, but just something to think about there. Plenty of opportunities for continued work and upward mobility. I just think it's worth mentioning that for us, there's a very family environment at RWS. We had a lot of people that started as interns. Actually, my boss, who is a vice president of RWS, started as an intern and continued to stay with the company as well. So whether it's RWS or anywhere that you're going, again, be someone that people want to work with, stay involved, stay active. And if you're interested, that's a different type of work than just saying, I'm going to hop project to project. I'm going to work for a firm. The benefits here, you've got that standard salary, you've got things like insurance. Not that any of that is impossible to get if you're freelancing. It's just it's a different style and something to keep your mind open to. And at this point, I am going to open it up for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Jake. That was some amazing information. I just wanted to point out a couple of key things that I wrote down here just from notes and some of my own personal experience as well. I think it's great what you said about theater without being in a traditional space. This is one of the things that we at USITT combat all the time, because obviously the last two T's are theater technology in our USITT name. And I think a lot of times people focus on, especially if you're looking, what's next in my career after I graduate college, or even if you're well established in your career, what's the next move, especially during this time when everybody's sort of trying to figure out what's next. What does entertainment and live events look like past this COVID-19 pandemic? So I think it's really important for everybody to keep that in mind. Theater and entertainment and events is not traditionally your proscenium stage, audience in front, actors on stage, techs in the back. It can be so many different things, like you said, whether it's a Christmas tree activation or a concert or a tour or a cruise ship or a theme park, whatever it could be, it's all entertainment. I think it's super important for people to understand. I also really liked your talk about a well-rounded skill set. Again, I think when you look at a traditional theater setting, everybody has a specific role. You have your TD, you have your stage manager, you have your lighting techs, you have your sound techs, you have your automation people, and everybody sort of keeps in their field. But when you go to experiences and you get outside of that traditional theater setting, people do have to cover a couple of different jobs. And so it's really good to keep that in mind as well. Mm-hmm. And then another thing I wrote down here, and you talked about it a little bit in a different way, but also I just wanted to point out, when you're in these experiential, most people know I started my career out in cruise ships, and I was there for 8 years in multiple different lines, working both on board and in the corporate office. But the guest relations specialist thing really stuck with me, because even though you use the term in a little bit of a different way, but when you look at traditional theater versus experiential theater or these other activations, there's not a traditional backstage area. So your backstage might be the stage. And so you actually have to be a guest relations expert at some points, because guests or patrons or whatever environment you're in, or they might ask you a question just because you're somebody that's employed by the contractor. So those are just some things to keep in mind. And then the best one to take away from this all is it's not what you know, but who you know. And those connections are super, super, super important, no matter where you are in your life or your career. So some really good points there.
Yeah.
We have lots of questions coming in, so we'll get to these now. Our first question says, how does someone make a break into the themed experience industry from the traditional theater background? So using those skill sets and just putting them into a different application.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends greatly on sort of what you're interested in doing long term. So if you're interested in saying, you know, I'm interested in being a designer, I might give you a slightly different path than being a technician. But ultimately, it's just get in on the ground level, no matter what. So apply, you know, look for these types of opportunities first, and just apply and start to have conversations with people. And again, don't be afraid to interview for positions that you might not otherwise apply for. Because sometimes, again, every firm right now that's doing experiential activations or experiential marketing, experiential entertainment, we're all using different terminology. We come from a theater background. RWS was born from a theater model. So I tend to still use terms like production manager and technical director, and terms that are relatively familiar to the theater world. But there's some folks out there that have positions that you really need to make sure you're reading the descriptions on, because it might be something that you're totally capable of and interested in, but you might be looking at it like, oh, site manager, that's not something I want to do. I don't know what a site manager is. Well, site manager might really be a great avenue for someone who's a stage manager, right, and is interested to take their opportunity outside to a festival environment.
So just being open to all the possibilities and really doing the research into those different positions, like you said, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Another question, has RWS or the Experience Group, has it been affected by COVID-19, and do you still have work booked out?
What was the end of that question?
Have you guys been affected by COVID-19, and do you still have work booked out, or are you seeing any impact based on that?
Yeah, good question. So I think everybody, I don't think it's fair to say that there's a single person that is professionally working in entertainment, period, that hasn't been affected by this. Well, you could probably even say more than entertainment, but at the very least, if you're working in entertainment, particularly if you're working in New York City entertainment right now, you've been affected. So most definitely. But I think there's a lot of really fun and exciting things that we are doing right now to stay ahead of this. So I'll just kind of mention briefly what's going on, although I will just plant a little seed here that Cody and I have had some conversations about doing another one of these, specifically geared towards COVID operations in the entertainment industry, which is a committee that I'm actually on right now. So we may be doing a whole section on that one. Yeah, stay tuned for more info on that one. But ultimately, yes, we've been affected. We do still have work planned, and what most of our clients have been doing right now is things are on sort of like a soft hold. I think there's a couple different scenarios. Obviously, you know, I had an Easter Bunny experience that was a full Easter Bunny walkthrough installation for a client. That something like that obviously got canceled because Easter has come and passed. But for things that we have in the future, for the most part, we've still retained a lot of that work. I mean, again, we're very active in the cruise line industry, and for something like that, it's not even up to the cruise lines right now. It's just the government saying all cruise is on pause. So ultimately, we're just kind of standing by, but we are keeping busy. There's a lot of fun new initiatives that are coming out soon from RWS. But we are absolutely still at the end of this presentation. There will be a slide, and I think Cody will share this with you as well. We have an email address that you can send your information over to. I'm not discouraging submissions for resumes or portfolios at this time. So we're absolutely still talking to people, still networking. And then as soon as I have projects good to go and I start to get green lights, then I'll be sending out offers and having the hiring conversations.
I think that's something
Good question.
important for everyone to know as well, is, you know, the face of what entertainment live events might look like post COVID-19 might change a little bit from what we were used to, but it's still going to be there. So no one should be feeling that they can't continue to apply for positions. I'm still seeing positions pop up on LinkedIn every day that are new in the industry. So even though the face of it might change, that, you know, what we think of it might differ just a little bit from, you know, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic or whatever, there's jobs that are still going to be out there, and entertainment is still a thing. So we have to have the technicians and designers to support it.
We're actually predicting at RWS that there's going to be quite a surge, specifically in the experiential world. I think demand is going to be higher than ever when we get out of this. So I actually think we're going to be kind of in the reverse scenario, where I'm going to be like hiring projects like crazy. And we're going to be very, very busy when we get through this, especially because there's some new initiatives that are going to be coming out soon.
So Jake's just asking you to like flood his inbox with your resumes. And
Do it.
All right, we have another question. How do you educate a client who isn't in our industry about what they're going to need, how much their vision is going to cost, particularly someone like a municipality who doesn't know the theatrical equipment design and labor like you guys that you talked about in your presentation?
That's an awesome question. So what we would do, and there's a couple different ways we could tackle this, but my favorite approach is when I'm able to talk clients through a scenario. Again, this is all dependent on how much time you have, but in an ideal world, before going into a large project like that with what you saw for Newport News, we would actually go through a master plan phase. So in some worlds, this could be called like pre-production, or some people call it soft production. There's all sorts of different worlds for it for us, but I would essentially do a master plan where we would basically tabletop pen to paper the entire project. So every electrical plan, where every single cable is being plugged in, elements lists, you know, drawing packages, renderings, floor plans, satellite imagery, color palettes, like just about everything you could possibly need, graphic files, you know, and we'll put together this massive, you know, plan, and then essentially say like, hey, here's what it's going to be. Let's, you know, kind of paper tech this a little bit first before we go in and show up. And in a lot of instances, you know, I'm working through this process with them over time. So I'm able to kind of say, do some presentations and say like, hey, and what I like about the way this question was phrased is, how do you educate them? Because in some instances, educating the client is really important. For this municipality, when we got on and I had a lighting designer that was sending me previs files, I had to actually explain to the city, like, here's what a previs is, and here's how it, you know, functions and how it is, like, because someone's going to look at that and say, wow, well, that doesn't look great. That's not exactly what I thought it was going to look like. And I'm like, okay, well, that's different.
It's
you know, you're looking at it.
100% realistic.
Yeah. So, you know, that's, education is a huge part of it, but the labor is a big part of it. You'd be surprised at how used to the labor thing cities are. That actually was kind of the least problem. They're kind of like, oh, labor, okay, great, yeah, we deal with that every day, particularly because for this project we're working with the parks department, so you know, they're used to that type of thing. But very, very good question, and it's doing it in a nice, polite, and smart way.
Perfect. Someone asked for us to stop screen sharing because they couldn't see us, so I'm stopping the screen share, but we can put it back up when we have that slide at the end. It's totally fine.
Oh yeah.
Another question: how does your team measure success on client expectations?
Great question. So typically for us, it's dealing with this at the beginning of the project, really taking the time to set those expectations, both, you know, set them first in writing and then go through everything verbally. And then it's just a matter of communication. I think the biggest and most important part of any entertainment process is communication, because there's so many different people involved and we're all kind of doing a little piece of the puzzle. So communication is essential. that production manager role is essential, just like a stage manager is kind of rallying, you know, the troops in that more traditional theatrical environment. And it's making sure that every single week we go on and do a production meeting, and it's a production meeting that takes a slightly different shape than a, you know, theatrical one, where we're sitting down and we're saying like, okay, you know, let's first talk about like, is the crane rented? You know, what time is the semi truck showing up? You know, a couple of those, like, let's get our heavy equipment in the door, let's get this, let's make sure that they're on the same page. A lot of it is scheduling logistics, again, because we're in these unique environments. It's not like I can just sneak in the middle of the night and load in a set and get out. In some instances, I'm needing to say like, hey, I need, you know, basically upwards of one city block, you know, caution taped off for 2 weeks to be able to do this type of project. Right. So it really depends on the scenario, but a lot of times you have multiple layers of clients that you're working with in these projects. It's not always just one representative. I'm talking to an ops person, someone from maintenance, someone from the electric department, and our company really loves to kind of integrate with those teams. So although I might have one main client representative that I'm working with, if it's anything to do with, you know, electrical and digging underground, I'm going to go over this direction. So it's just knowing and basically treating, you know, that like your giant production team, and knowing like, hey, I really want to keep the landscaping guy on my side, because at the end, I'm going to ask him to come in here and put some pretty mulch on top of everything.
Of course. And I think to that goal measurement changes per client, right? Like some people just do experiences from a marketing initiative, so maybe their goal is X number of impressions on social media, or some people do it for revenue streams. So it's totally different based on what your clients' needs are.
Absolutely.
Cool. Lynn's asking, how many full-time staff do you have versus seasonal contracted employees?
Okay. So during our normal, I'm going to say during normal operation, non-pandemic times, we're operating with 110 full-time staff and then 4,000 seasonal employees per year. That seasonal employee number, though, however, comprises both performers and technicians. So I don't have the actual technician number handy right now, but it's a very large number, because some of our clients in our projects are sort of duplicate projects. Like if you think of a cruise line, for example, most cruise lines have multiple ships. So if I'm going to say I'm going to install, you know, one Christmas tree on every one of these cruise ships, that's, you know, this times X amount of ships that they have. So, and then I need, you know, maybe 2 of them are happening on the same day. So then I went from needing 30 people that day to needing 60 people that day. Right. So the numbers add up relatively quickly.
Cool. Jake, this is sort of a personal question for you, but what has been the coolest experience that you've been a part of so far, and why did you enjoy it so much?
Oh, I think it's going to be what I showed in that presentation, actually, with Oprah. And I enjoyed it so much because I was so delightfully surprised at how, I mean, she is what you see on TV, like that's her. And I think that was so amazing for me, because you hear so much in the celebrity world, you know, that there's like this backside to it.
The camera turns off and the devil comes out.
Yeah, no, and she is just like, I mean, it is just, it's crazy. It was like, she was probably the only person in my entire life. And I worked with Mariah Carey, I've worked with, you know, a bunch of big names, but there was something about being in her presence where I was like, when you hear the voice and you're standing in front of her, is just really an amazing experience, because she, you know, on a professional note, she knows her brand so well. And it is not ever that she's like, you know, nobody of her she's not being difficult to be difficult. She knows her brand and knows what she wants and knows, you know, how to be Oprah. Right. And that's just, it was an amazing experience. And I really enjoyed that. It was I probably lost a lot of hair in maybe 10 years of my life, but it was an incredible experience.
It was worth it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we do have, I was just looking through the remaining questions that we have, and a lot of them are sort of employment-based, what are the next steps in sort of getting into this industry. So I think we can sort of answer that with your, getting in touch with you and yourself and your team at RWS, and sort of networking and seeing how their skill set can be applied.
Yeah, totally. So what we're going to do is we're going to share a slide. Do you want me to share this, Cody?
Yeah, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. So this information here, I encourage, you can take a picture of this or screenshot. Ignites at experiencerws.com is the best way to get in touch with us. This is an email address that a couple of us are managing right now because this is for the entire Ignites program. So please just make sure that you indicate USITT in the subject line so that I know it is from this group and I will answer you guys. But ultimately, here I'm open to whatever you've got or whatever you want to share. Really, if you have portfolio material, that's welcome, not required. To me, if you are reaching out, I do ask, and you're interested in any type of employment opportunity, please attach your resume to that email so that we have that information as well. And just mention in the email if there's anything that you're particularly interested in. Right now, like I had mentioned, I am pretty much I'm in a hurry up and wait phase. So I'm on a complete hold. I will take this time to sift through information and have back and forth as necessary. But for right now, I can't even be sending out any official communication regarding offers. But I would love to have you guys email me, because then a couple things happen. Number one, I've got your resume on file and I have your contact information. Number two, we've opened up a dialogue there. If you have questions or if you're interested in something else at RWS, I think that email is probably the best way to go. But there is also a website there, experiencerws.com/ignites. That's a splash page for Ignites. So there's really not any interactive nature to that page. It's pretty much just a one pager with some information, but you can delete the Ignites there as well and just go to experiencerws.com, check out the website. There's tons more projects. If you want to learn more about the company, you can look at some other services that we do as well. I would definitely encourage that.
Perfect. And we'll get all of this information posted on our social channels as well. So if you missed the email address of the website, we'll have it posted up on our social channels just at the completion of this webinar today. Jake, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and giving, I keep getting a lot of comments that this is like a huge, insightful webinar, and thanks for sharing this information. So I think we've done what we were supposed to do today. So thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
All righty. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, thank you to Jake and RWS for being a part of this today. And again, we can't wait to have RWS at our show in Columbus next year. So standing by for that. We hope that you enjoyed this session today and that you really were enlightened and inspired that there is a future ahead. There is work to be had. And I hope that we introduced you to a little bit of a different capacity of work as well that your skill set can be used for, because it's a wide variety of opportunities out there for everyone. We look forward to welcoming you back to another one of our online education and training sessions in the very near future. Coming up this afternoon, we have two different options at 4 p.m. being presented for Forum at 4. We'll be presenting one. It's called An Online Approach to Old Problems, Archiving Technical Theater via Facebook Groups. This is a very interesting discussion where we'll be discussing how an online approach can help you find information to old problems and be able to share those stories, and how this group has impacted their own work and what the future may hold as well. Our other session at 4 o'clock Eastern Time is mixing different LED color systems in a single lighting rig. And this presentation is being presented by Ford Sellers and our friends at Show Day Professional. So be sure to check those out. You can find more information on both of those at usitt.org. If you haven't already registered for those, please go ahead and do so. And while you're at it, be sure to like us on our social media platforms as well. That's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We're there, and you can be sure to stay up on the latest USITT news. Just a reminder as well that tomorrow afternoon we'll be releasing our schedule for all of next week's exciting education and training content. So be sure to check back tomorrow afternoon at usitt.org for all of next week's content. We'd also like to thank our friends at the American Society of Theater Consultants for their generous support in making these webinars and broadcasts possible. If you have a moment at the completion of this webinar, you will be prompted to take a short survey. This survey is just to make sure that we're providing you the content that you want and need during this time. So if you have a moment, please do us a favor and go ahead and complete that for us. And then once again, on behalf of all of us at USITT and everyone at RWS, we thank you so much for joining us for this New at Noon presentation. We wish you all the best. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you at 4 o'clock and see you right back here at noon on Monday. Have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend and stay well, everyone.